Good morning friends. So in this session we are going to learn the conversion of Mealy to Moore. So last class we have seen one particular example, one particular table is given, and in this session one particular diagram is given, and based on this given diagram which is given in the figure 3.1, what we can do, first we can form a table. Based on the table we can form a Moore machine, right? So what is the procedure for that? So in this case we are having three different number of states, that is q1, q2 and q3, right? So in this case q1 is not associated with any output, right? So q1 is not associated with any output over here. Now based on the inputs, what q1 basically does, it changes these states. So if you put q1 to 0, it jumps to the next state, that is q2, and produces the output q1, right? So q1 in this case is the initial state, right? Now on the other hand, if you put q2 to 0, where it jumps to the same state, that is q2, and produces the output z2 in this case, right? So obviously q2 associated with the output z2, and if you put q2 to if we put q2 to 1, where it jumps to the next state, that is q3, and produces the output z1. So obviously q2 associated with two different outputs, that is z1 and z2, right? And q3 also associated with the same way, q3 also associated with z2 and z1, right? That means q2 and q3 performs duality in this case, right? Now what we can do for the initial cases, we write it down all the number of states given over here. So q1, q2, q3, q1, q2, q3. Now in this case basically input basically lies in between 0 and 1. So we have to write it down all the input. In this case we are assuming the inputs a equals to 0 and a equals to 1. So because input lies in between 0 and 1, right? 0 and 1. On the other hand, if we put q1, if we put q1 to 0, where it jumps, q1 to 0 jumps to q2, right? q1 to 0 jumps to q2 and produces the output z1 in this case, so I have written the output z1, right? On the other hand, if you put q2 to if you put q2 to 0, where it jumps, q2 to 0, it jumps to q2, the same state, that is q2, and produces the output z2 in this case. So this is the q2, right? Now on the other hand, if you put q2 to q3 to 0, where it jumps, q3 to 0, it jumps to q2, right? This is the q2 state over here, and produces the output z1. So in this way we are forming the next state, that is when the input a equals to 0, and the next input is when the input a equals to 1. We can form the next state over here. So just check it out. In this case, when the input a equals to 1, q1 to 1, where it jumps, q1 to 1, jumps to q3, it jumps to q3, right? It jumps to q3 and produces the q1 to 1, it jumps to where it jumps to q3 and produces the output z1, right? On the other hand, if you put q1 to 1, is there any state? If you put q2 to, is there any state? q2 to 1, jumps to it jumps to q3 and produces the output z1 in this case, right? On the other hand, q3 to 1, just check it out, q3 to 1, where it jumps to the same state, that is q3, and produces the output z2 in this case, right? So in this way we are forming that particular table. But mind it, in this case q3 is associated with z1 and q3 is also associated with z2. That means q3 in this case performs duality. In the same way, q2 also associated with z1, q3 also associated with z2. It also performs duality in this case. So z1 and z2, right? So that's why what we can do on the next case, we have written all the present states over here. So in this case q1 is the initial state, right? What we can do in this case, as q2 and q3 performs duality, that's why we can break q2 into q21. Why 1? Because z1 over here, that's why we have written q21. Then what you can do for the next case, as it is z2, then q22, right? So q21 and q22 on the same way as the as it is our q3 associated with z1, so that's why we have written q3 with z1, that means q31, and also q3 with z2, that means q32 in this case. Now in this case, input a, I have written all the number of inputs, that is 0 and 1. We have written all the number of states, and we have written all the outputs as well, because in the case of moon machine is where the output is depending on the present states, right? q1, just check it out, q1 over here. So q1, so we have written q2 into q21, q22, q3 into q31 in this way. Now q1 which associated with q2, but no, there is no existence of q2 over here, as the output is z1, that's why I have written q21 over here, right? That's why it becomes q21. So on the other hand, q21 and q22, that means it is q2, right? That's why as it is z2, that's why it is replaced by q22 and q22, right? On the other hand, q3, the next state will be the next state is zq2, and the corresponding output is z1, right? That's why we have, what we can do, we have written, so q3, now q3 becomes 31 and 32, as it is 1, that means z1, that's why we have written q21 and q21, right? So in this way we have written all the next state when the input a equals to 0, right? On the other hand, when the input a equals to 1, right, what we can do, in this case the output is z1, in this case output is z1 in this case. Now what we can do, as the output is z1, that's why we can forming 3 1 over here. Now on the same way, it is 3 and z1, so q21 and q2, that means q2, so we have written in this case 3 1 and 3 1. Why 3 1 3 1? Because corresponding output is z1, and q31 means it is q2, so that's why 3 1 and 3 1, right? On the other hand, next state is q3 means 3 1 and 3 2. What we can do, so we have to write it down, we can replace by q32 and q32, and corresponding output is z2. Why you have written 3 2? Because the output is, the suffix is 2, right? That's why q32 in this case. Now based on, so in this way we are getting, we are also getting, when the input a equals to 1, we are getting the next state. Now how we can form the output over here? So as q1 does not associate with any output over here, that's why q1 make it blank, output is null in this case, that's why make it blank. q21 output is z1, as it is 1, so that's why z1, as it is 2 z2, as it is 1 z1, as it is 2 z2, right? So in this way we are getting the equivalent form of table that is given in the figure 3.2, which is a conversion of Moore machine conversion, right? So in this way we are converting Mealy machine and Moore machine, so right. So if you have got any queries, then please ask me, and please subscribe my channel. So if you have got any doubt, then please also ask me, and please make a comment if you have got any doubt, and please like the video.